for this edition is Combating Financial Frauds with Technology. We now have an interesting panel discussion on AI and ML in fraud risk management. Please join me in welcoming the moderator, Mr. Anurag Jain, Director, KPMG, followed by our panelists, Mr. Bharat Panchal, Chief Risk Officer, APAC, Middle East and Africa at FIS Global, Mr. Singh Jaini, CEO at DigitalFifth, and Mr. Arpit Ratan, Chief Business Officer and co-founder at Signzy. A very warm welcome to you all. Over to you, Mr. Jain.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm audible and visible. First of all, a very warm welcome to our esteemed guests and fellow panelists, and to all the participants, very good afternoon. Very quickly, just from an administrative perspective, what I'm going to do is we have about 15 minutes. I'll spend 2-3 minutes for a brief to set the context and then start posing some questions to our fellow panelists to get their insights and views in terms of what they are seeing in the industry. Following our conversations, we'll leave about 10 minutes towards the end for the questions and answers from the audience. As we go through our discussion, I'd encourage all of you to share your questions through the chat window, and feel free to, and we will address those towards the end of the session. Okay, with that being said, let me kickstart the discussion. I've got a few slides just to sort of facilitate the discussion in a specific direction. So with that being said, let me just start the conversation. What we're going to discuss today is about financial crime compliance. And we see that financial crime compliance, of course, is a broad umbrella under which fraud, anti-money laundering, anti-bribery, anti-corruption, and today even cybercrime is being converging. Having said that, we see that today money launderers are able to successfully launder 99% of their illicit profits through legal banking financial systems. And this is in spite of the effort that all of us are are investing in improving our technology infrastructure and improving the skills of our compliance team, and as well as improving the data availability. With that as the background, let me first reach out to Mr. Bharat. Bharat, as in your stint at NPCI and also today at FCI, you must have seen numerous cases around fraud and money laundering. It'll be good to get your perspective on the challenges that you are foreseeing in the industry, and how do you see artificial intelligence and machine learning solutions overcoming these challenges?
Thank you, Anurag, and thanks to fellow co-panelists for this wonderful talk today. One decade from 2011 to 2021, I think that it is a decade of transformation, and we have seen a great transformation in terms of digital banking, or everything and anything you talk about today, our day-to-day life. So it's nothing but the democratization of be it banking or technology, and so much of reliance on technology. So that's one fact I just want to start with. But when you look at the adverse use of that technology, or adverse use of kind of sophistication what we have brought in people's life, that has come out with different challenges called fraud. And today, if we see the kind of fraud what we witnessed in 2021, those fraud were not at all existing anywhere in the world before 2 or 3 years, right? And the pace what they pick up, the fraudsters especially, are phenomenal, and kind of if I have to take from Indian perspective, making some jugaad using a matchbox stick to defunk the ATM pin pad and committing a fraud. From there to very, very sophisticated ransomware, which is going on many organizations, many people. That's the overall plethora of financial crime what I have witnessed in last one decade. Having said so, we did one survey called PACE, which is very prestigious survey about the digital adoption and fraud. So what we found that there 34% rise in fraud in last 1 year. That
Yeah.
is very, very serious.
Yeah.
One other statistic I must give you, that CERTIN, which is our apex body on cybercrime, they have also submitted the data that there were more than 12 lakh attempts of cyber attack in various sector of the country in last 1 year, which is again from 8 lakh to 12 lakh. It is significant increase in number of frauds or number of attacks. Now, with all this together, when you see that the 70% of fraud or anything in terms of cyber crime, it is always concentrated on one part, the financial gain. So out of 100, at least 70% have single motive how they can make money. Now, if that's the case, definitely the financial institutions or bank or wherever there's money, definitely the forester are attract towards that. And therefore, when mass is there, today we are talking about digitization, where you are processing a billion of transactions. Now, billion transaction is like, you 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 cannot evaluate each and every transaction, be it let's say for example not only banking but today Amazon or Swiggy or Zomato or you just name it, every digital platform they are processing million transactions. Now how can they look at each and every transaction about the genuinity or integrity of the transaction and make sure it is not fraudulent or without any different purpose. Now, well, when we are using this platform for a betterment of the society. Protesters are also using same thing for their betterment naturally, because
Yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
because
Absolutely.
one of the cases, if I can recall that when I was investigating some fraud about 2 years ago, money moved from one account to another to another, and all this happened in 15 minutes. And you will amazed to know that it went in 17 different accounts just in 15
My
minutes.
God.
Now,
My God. My God.
look at the what speed the money are moving from
Yeah.
one to other account, and on 18th account, money were withdrawn from the ATM. Now, when all such a speedy layering of money is happening, a movement of money is happening, naturally it is just impossible, because when you believe that my transactions or my platform is secure, but when this kind of attempts are made, naturally you are exposed to different challenge altogether. Now,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
when we talk about the kind of seriousness about such fraud, naturally the answer is poison is answer to the poison. That's what we said. So only technology can challenge with the technology. It is not a human being which can fight with those kind of challenge. Therefore, the AI and ML are the next next move. But before that, one interesting observation I must tell you that in our survey of 2021, what we found, people above 65 age are not prone to a fraud. They are not exposed
Mm.
to the fraud. It's very very interesting point. While I'm saying that they are not exposed to the fraud, the reason why they don't believe in digital, they do not use mobile banking, they do not, access net banking. They
Yeah.
are the people. They still go walk in the branch, sit with
Mm.
the teller, they get their passbook updated, they have to chat with the bank manager and come back. That's a personal connect. But
Yeah.
that's the only very few small segment. What about the bigger segment? Generation Next. They for them everything is in hand. They want everything on the fly, quick, and with full of response. Now, if that means we are in the era, or we are already entering the era where you will demand everything on demand, and the sustainability, availability, and safety and security of everything what you do is almost equal at par as a demand from the customer. Now, in that case, unless you have sophisticated in-flight monitoring of what user is doing, whether it is genuine or fraudulent or suspicious, unless you have answer for that, long run, you may not sustain the trust of customer, because once somebody lose the money, they lose the trust not only that particular day, they lose the trust on that organization, they lose the trust from the entire ecosystem. So when we are talking about these kind of challenges, one need not to look at in isolation of my bank or your organization. Look at the ecosystem, because when Swiggy is acquiring a transaction for food delivery, it involves lot many things: the logistic, the supply chain, the bank, everything. So a Swiggy customer moving out, I'm just taking name Swiggy for example, but a Swiggy customer stop buying or stop placing order using that platform, it impact to every other ancillary business also. And therefore,
Very true. Very true.
when we are talking about this kind of thing, we have large challenge to address. That's my opening remark, Anurag.
No, that is so insightful, Bharat. Thank you for bringing that up. I think you've touched upon some very critical points. Right? One is the speed at which the business and the money is flowing. It's so critical that traditional systems, how sustainable are traditional systems in detecting those. Second, you touch upon also upon the way the financial systems are integrated among each other. Right? So it's not that it's about one bank. It's about the entire plethora of the
Ecosystem.
entire ecosystem. Absolutely, very true. And the third is the most important. It's not just the issue of money getting laundered. It's the question of trust, and that I think is most critical, particularly for the new generation which is coming up and the new millennia, which is going to be using more and more the digital assets, so to say. So with that as a background, let me come over to you. I mean, you've been you're running your own consulting firm in this space. You've been a CTO at DCB Bank. You've also worked with core banking solutions like Infosys Finacle. So given your background and given what, the context of financial crime and AI and machine learning, what's your view in terms of the readiness of our banks to adopt these kind of solutions? And are the banks, do they have the necessary skill set? Do they have the data infrastructure and the technology infrastructure to go ahead and implement these kind of solutions?
Yeah, thanks, Anurag, for that question. My basic perspective is that when you talk about financial crime, you're talking about revenues of criminals, right?
Absolutely.
They're, I
Perfect.
mean,
Yes.
and that's their passion, right? They want to do it. They have to find ways and means to do it, and they don't have to pull anybody. I mean, they don't have to beat up to get the money, right? So they are smart guys doing the work, and they're doing with their rosy roti, right? They're doing it with passion. The bankers do it, they do it for revenues as well. So they look at top line, right? So if you look at every organization, they want to launch a new mobility experience. They want to launch, I mean, a bank or fintech and all of them. Their job is to sell, right? And sales takes precedence over anything else. So revenue takes precedence. Now, when it comes to the financial crimes, it's not, there's no passion actually. Generically, and I'll give you one particular view. Generically, bankers are or even fintechs, people are not very passionate. They're doing it because they like it, but the passion is different, right? It's a survival issue. These guys have survival issue, right? They will thrive on it. So I think there is a balance issue, right? And second part is, I think some banks are clued on and they're ahead. But if you look at in India, how many banks exist and how many NBFC exist and how many fintechs exist, and if you do a sum total of smart guys who have exact idea about financial crime, AML, how do you control it, all of that AML and all of that fraud management, you will be counting on less than maybe 20 people. Okay, less than 20 people. Rest of them are saying vendor kar lega, right? Vendor ko kar denge, vendor ka platform pe chala jayega, ho jayega. Now, if the engineering is not thought through from crime perspective, security perspective, process perspective, and then we are not reacting fast, right? At the end of the day, you like it or not, when IMPS is processed by banks, a fair number of them must be processing it based on trust. Saying कुछ नहीं होगा, banks में ही तो जा रहा है, होगा तो देखेंगे. And I have been part of just one large incident. Of course, we have been a part of multiple incidents, one large incident.
Sure. Yeah.
I realized on that day, that in the whole ecosystem, the only guy who's holding the ball is the guy who's responsible. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. So I know on those nights I've spent figuring out, and Bharat and we were on calls and I was trying to figure out what to do. Actually, if I looked at the ecosystem and I'm talking about all the other banks and I'm talking to people, every entity had 2 or 3 guys interested. Rest all were doing BAU, absolute BAU, right? So all I'm saying is that financial crimes will keep increasing as more and more guys go digital. At times, I believe that those who are going digital are so far behind the users and community itself that they will make blatant mistakes, right? Vendor ko they are testing security process, absolutely zero security process most of the time. And some of them are caught, some of them not caught. Some of them are reporting, some of them are not reporting. So crimes will increase. Are we ready? Answer is no. But we are waiting for some large incidents, which will wake up. So, आज की date में we know about 2 3 cases. We talk about RBI came back with cybersecurity policy, but I think game is still getting played, and more guys will come on board. I think revenue for criminals will keep increasing. I think we should switch our jobs and move there, right? Maybe we may not bring that much of passion, I guess.
I don't recommend that.
No. In fact, while I have deep connect with the Jamtara gang, and they often share various modus operandi. Sir, market में ये नया आया है. So they in fact one fellow has gone to that extent saying that sir और कुछ अभी आने वाला तो बता ना तो हमको ये we'll do some partnership. Very good. No, but I must talk one line on what Samir said. If I have to summarize the pain point, what he's trying to address, and that's the reality, which is my own experience also, that on LinkedIn nowadays there's a new trend started that if you put that, okay, I'm a jobless and I have so much of difficulty to survive and all this, you might have seen that everybody is typing, commenting for better reach. Actually, they are just doing their job. Okay, I have done my job. I have commented for somebody. Nobody is trying to address the problem what that guy is having. You'll hardly find some. You will hardly find somebody. Hey guy, you please send me your CV. Let me try it for you. You will find 1 out of 1,000. That is what exactly somebody is saying. That everybody, okay, vendor is there, our IT provider is there. He will take care. But what he will take care? You see strategy and the strategy and the decision making. You can't outsource. You have outsourced you have outsourced your IT service and all this. You haven't outsourced your strategy. You haven't outsourced your decision making. If you are doing so, you are not fit to the business. It's as simple as that.
No, but this is very interesting. I think Bharat, you highlighted again some very critical points. But Samir, coming over to you, it seems like our banks are not ready. I mean, our financial ecosystem are not ready to implement. And it's not just the question of data; it's also the question of having that drive to kind of make sure that our systems are sophisticated enough to intercept these kind of transactions. But we have our third panelist, Arpit, who's been implementing AI ML solutions in banks. He's addressing one simple problem of client onboarding, and he's worked with a lot of Indian banks and I've seen him grow his company grow right from very beginning, from day zero. Arpit, why don't you talk us about some of the counter views what you're just hearing? Are you and one is in terms of the readiness of the bank, and two, more importantly, how are you automating the entire customer client onboarding process and thereby enabling the entire digital transformation?
Yeah. So I think first is that this understanding that digital is causing more risk, which is true. I mean, in numbers. But if you look at it logically, it should be the opposite. Digital provides you better data. Digital provides you better access. It provides you real-time data. In fact, it provides you the truth of certain information which is not available in the physical world, where beyond the last person, you actually don't know what has really happened. Digital allows you to trace a lot of these attributes which did not exist in the physical world. And therefore, theoretically, if you're doing digital onboarding, you should actually improve the chances of countering risk versus doing physical. What is actually happening is, and I think Samir was very right on button, that all of this is very business driven and business led, and rightly so, because the budget has to come from somewhere to implement and invest. But the bank is only concerned till the point an account gets opened or a credit card gets issued. Beyond that, right, what happens to that customer data is where I think all the problem happens. So till an account opening, we can give you loan in 10 minutes, or we can open an account in 2 minutes, or open an account in 5 minutes. That's I think great, right? For a business, it's a great story. For financial crime, what we need is this data then being available easily, accessible easily in real time when future you want to do monitoring, or you want to do audits, or in case of an incident, you want to quickly retrieve the data and take an action. And I think that's where the miss is happening. Beyond that account gets opened, how that data goes where is still in slightly a legacy world. I think we're still dealing with legacy databases to the extent a lot of banks that I know actually open the accounts digitally, but then physically would take printouts and then store them for future audits, right? Or would put it into archaic legacy database systems which do not have real-time APIs and need to take it out as PDFs from the system. And I think that's where entire breakage in the system is happening. What we truly need is for the banks to understand that they will have to upgrade their databases as well, and not just their onboarding systems, and then allow for a micro API enabled interaction between these different systems. See, one of the problem what is happening in a bank is when a fraud starts happening, it's not that even after the first fraud, the bank will stop them. The person who's gained access will keep going to different financial instruments and keep doing that fraud. And that's because for, let's say, credit card, bank has a different system. For the core banking account, there is a different system. For a loan management, there's a different system. So banks has these different systems which are not even talking to each other. So when crime starts happening, by the time bank even realizes that it's a lot of damage has happened. So banks need to think really, because onboarding is done. I think it's kind of a solved problem now. It's more about efficiency, better experience, etc. But the digitization has happened. How do you then treat this data that you've received? How do you store it? How do you make it available to all apps? Like we are working with uh, two banks actually who we feel are very, very innovative in that, or at least are ahead of the industry, who are trying to set up what we're calling as core KYC hubs, which means that all applications across the bank will be dealing with a single asset. There'll be a single asset which will take the KYC information, make it available to all applications. And eventually, if incident happens or monitoring is needed, it will be on this underlying core KYC hub, which will of course be very digital. So every kind of incidents are recorded. And to be honest, because I mean, we talk about this Jamtara incident, and because there's of course a Netflix series on it, but the idea is that now GPS location based triggers are possible. You can understand, especially in case of financial crime, it's not just the KYC information or account information, but you're getting IMI numbers, you're getting the location. So in case of a fraudulent behavior, you can trigger it. The problem is that this data is not kept well, and nobody, and to what point Samir was making and Bharat was making earlier, no one really cares. After that account is open, no one really cares how it is stored or what infra is used to make sure that financial crimes are prevented in future.
So it seems what you're pointing out is that the data is sort of disintegrated across different products and services that the client is using, right? Right. So there's no integration of data points, which thereby is makes it even more difficult to detect where the money the money, how the money is flowing through, and detect possible money laundering related or fraud related transactions, so to say. That's interesting. And in fact, I had a next slide on Mentimeter, but let me come to this towards the end because I think this is a very interesting discussion happening. I would like to, Bharat, move on to you, but to get a little bit of regulatory perspective. It seems that the criminals, so to say, are using sophisticated technologies, and they're essentially trying to stay ahead, like you mentioned about Jamtara. They're trying to stay ahead from us. We are seeing that regulators across different jurisdictions, be it India, even our own RBI has given guidelines of using machine learning models as far as possible, and analytics, embedding analytics into risk and compliance programs. Monetary Authority of Singapore has is incentivizing banks, so to say, to adopt these kind of algorithms. Similarly, the other regulators across different jurisdictions. What, in your view, from a governance perspective and policy perspective, are the changes that you foresee should happen or are currently happening that you can share with us and our audience?
So I think we must acknowledge one part, and Samir would agree with me that India is blessed with two great things: the great digital innovation, at the same time very far-sighted, or
Regulated.
well defined regulation to manage that growth. There is no
Bilkul,
doubt about
absolutely.
this. There is no doubt.
Absolutely.
See,
Absolutely.
RBI is so much, just not because I know RBI very well, but it is general perception as a professional that the kind of security guideline or kind of supervision what they do as a regulator, I think unparalleled across the world. Look at
Very
look
true.
at two-
Very
look,
true.
look at it, 2008, when they came out with the proposal to have OTP SMS as an OTP. The world laughed at us. World literally laughed at us. These people do not have teledensity. They don't have last mile connectivity. Half of the people are not having even mobile. How are they going to do this? Today, I think that's a great achievement of the country, because everything, not only one bank, entire ecosystem using OTP as one of the. Of course, we can always debate about whether OTP is relevant in today's time or not, but of course, at 12, 13 years, it was very much there. So slowly, gradually, as and when they have seen the growth and the challenges, because as a regulator, they've kept always watching what is happening in the ecosystem. And therefore, if I recollect in 2013, when I, along with RBI, we came out with the debit card management system, and the cooling period for NEFT or RTGS new account addition and all. From there till last this February, the digital risk framework which RBI has come out, I think that's a great I would say a regulation from the governance perspective. If it is really taken seriously and just not tick mark, but religiously followed from the compliance point of view, I think I don't see there's a need to do anything more. Because see, RBI asked for the digital system, like my previous organization NPCI, everything and anything. You take from NFS to the FASTag with the product, last product which I was involved, everything and anything. Security and safety was part of the concept itself. It was never ever added as a last, good to have or some, the kind of marketing proposition. No, it was the day when we talked about the UPI. We first, okay, how will make these transactions safe and secure? How will build the trust among the customer? I think that is the everything. All about the success of that secure ecosystem. So when it comes to regulation, I think regulator has their own views. For sometimes we don't like the way they put a kind of restriction, or they do not allow things to go ahead. But look at the kind of ecosystem in which we are, where you one hand, of course, we have a great technology, the most sophisticated payment infrastructure anywhere in the world in India. But at the same time, our digital literacy is almost at the opposite side. Right now, you make all the provision for them, you make all kind of controls for them, but we still believe, and that's what we debated in previous discussion also, that we are still those old days where we believe that somebody else will do it, is not my job. We still believe in tick in the box and not kind of a rigorous ongoing continuous monitoring. Because see, tick in the box, once upon a time it was okay that you do audit your infrastructure once in a 2 year. That was the Gopal Krishna committee suggested in 2008. That is no more relevant. Today, I think you need to continuously monitor your infrastructure. You need to, monitor all your transactions, and that's why I think regulation perspective. If you really ask me, I don't think so. There's a need for any regulation today. Enough of regulations are there. Please just follow it religiously. Just follow it religiously, because we still believe that it is someone's job. It's not my job. Somebody will do. So even I will take one more minute to tell one
Sure,
great,
sure, sure,
very
sure.
very nice story
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Akbar and Birbal. So
Please.
Akbar asked that, okay, tomorrow that the swimming pool what he built that time has to be filled in with the milk. And he asked Birbal to that, okay, go and tell the entire the city that everybody has to come with this milk. So that the mandate was released, and next day morning, when after all this happened, people came and asked that, okay, sir, I got only one poor Brahmin who came with, kind of vessel of milk, and rest all came with the water, because they all were thinking that everybody is going to bring milk. If I add one glass of water, who's going to notice? And because of that, kind of perception, 99.99 came with water, and only one guy came with the real milk. So today, I think we believe that it is somebody will do, and eventually nobody does it.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about regulation, all we need to do is we have to just religiously adopt. That's it.
Yeah, no, that's great point, and we love hearing stories from you, but particularly the cases. It's been we've had some in-depth discussions, but okay. So given that the need has been established, that the current systems and the traditional systems can no longer be sustainable as we move more and more towards the digital world. The case also has been established that from a regulatory point of view, our regulator is really foresighted, and there is no doubt about it. In fact, I have myself been engaged by banks in implementing, market intelligence unit kind of solutions, which are more analytics led for detecting fraud. So our regulator is very foresighted. There is no doubt about it. Readiness of the bank, we see that, what we are hearing is that there is, that while the infrastructure and technology might be there, there is data integration that might be required. The intent has to go up a little bit, one notch maybe. Now, let's say that we've crossed those hurdles, and let's come to the real implementation issues. Samir, let me start off with you. The second part of the core discussion. When implementing such solutions, and you've done such, digital transformation, etc., in various banks, how do you, sort of go about implementing machine learning solutions, particularly in this particular space? If you can quote certain examples and share with our audience the challenges you foresee, and how do you go about in, overcoming those challenges? That would be great.
Okay, so maybe I'll go with the other pointer which we heard about legacy systems. I think
Sure.
it's never about legacy systems. It's about legacy people, right? And
Yeah.
legacy people are not negative people. Legacy people are not stupid people. They're
No,
sharp,
absolutely. Yeah. Sure.
stabilized in a particular environment, right? So the pointer I'm just saying is that today, if a Paytm bank does sales, 100% of sales happen on digital world. Whereas for a largest of the banks, not even 1 or 2 or 3% would happen purely digitally. And those who say that it's digital, actually, and I'm putting some exceptions of maybe like a Kotak Bank. It's actually doing cross sell to the same customers they have, right? So it's like a transaction rather than actually a sale, right? So the point is the exposure of current banks largely on the new generation is very limited. Fintechs also have grown with slowness, right? So they also have slowly come up. They would have seen the fraud. They would have closed the door. Whereas the banks, when they will come up now, they will open the doors like this. Okay. And I know that many banks are looking at that in this year, we will do a 3,000 crores of this, 10,000 crores of that, all of that, right? Now, when you think about UPI or when you think about IMPS, the security is inbuilt in the framework itself because it's a network which is running it, right? And network is controlling things out. If something goes for a toss, we will come with some control. But now when the banks are doing some of these initiatives, be it any kind of new product, they're going independently because they saw their own product and own sales. So what I see ahead is almost like disaster, and disaster of a disproportionate level because people who are running have absolutely no idea. So what they're doing is that the prior to COVID, we had this digital was not so important, and I know we are part of the cycle, right? We are COVID positive in terms of business. Everybody's talking about digital to us right now. But the point is, COVID first cycle, everybody stopped, right? They did not jump saying that COVID will go away. After second COVID, no, it's not going away. People are pulling tons of money into the digital side. And how much money and all the kits and all the vendors will bring together, I think it's going to. So everybody will focus on revenues. Everybody focus on how do you go out forward and do it rather than doing anything else. The other thing is that real-time decisioning is something which bankers have not done. Okay. And when I say bankers have not done, they've not done, right? That's why the PL business has not grown up on their side. They were always doing 5 lakhs of PL, right? 3 lakhs of PL. Because below that, they wanted to see and talk to the people, right? Now, then these guys go digital. The challenge is that real-time decision making needs tons of data and understanding of data and why decisions are taken. So what will happen is that it will become a BRE engine or a kind of engine, right? Rule-based engine. So if it is more than that, stop. This is more, do this, stop. It will create more disruption. So I think AI/ML for this segment is basically vendor dependent. Some vendor will come, sell the model. It'll get deployed for one product or one service, but it'll never be holistic. So I think where we are, we will have disasters. The systems are difficult to, and I know I'm painting a negative picture, but होता क्या है कि अगर आपको स्कूटर चलाना नहीं आता तो आप गिरोगे जरूर, राइट? और चूंकि आपको बहुत तेज चलाना है, because you want to reach 3,000 crore, 5,000 crore fast, you will end up making those mistakes by inherent. So I think education is something which is seriously missing. I'll give you maybe a last pointer on that, is that I think joker in the pack normally in a bank is the CTO. Okay. And why is the joker in the pack? Is he's supposed to know nothing. Okay. When the business is talking, he's supposed to know nothing. He's supposed, hey, तुमको करना है कर लो यार, code कर दो. But when things go for a toss, everything becomes a UAT issue. Right? So the point is, people in the technology teams are also not that knowledgeable. तो अगर आप सिर्फ सिक्योरिटी बॉक्स को अलग डाल दोगे तो फट जाएगा. Future is about making everybody aware of this and build it in part of journey, but it's utopian idea. It'll take some few disasters before we take it very seriously.
Bharat, you are smiling. I think you definitely want to add a comment or two. I know we are short on time, but definitely want to hear your views.
No, see, actually, what he is saying, kind of. Let me summarize in very
sure.
Hindi verb.
Yeah.
Because AI, ML, and the problem statement what we are carrying today, where the largest challenge, what Samir trying to illustrate here, and that's what is my perception also, that same shoes does not go in everybody's feet. What is happening today, that I have my shoes, so to fit in your leg, I'll have to cut your toe or I'll have to cut your finger. I can't afford to do that. Why can't you make shoes to meet my requirement rather fitting your shoes in my leg? That's the fundamental problem. Business is, bullying down. No, ye jana hai. CTO, I don't care. No patch, no downtime. Will not give downtime. My system performance, no boss. You are going to lose all your customer for whom which you are crying today. One disaster, good enough. It will wipe out you. But no, we will wait, and that's what our historically we see. We have learned from the mistake. Good, it is good to learn from the mistake, but let's not let's not repeat those mistakes, because we have already seen. I mean, maybe fortunately or unfortunately, I was the person at the helm who has investigated all large breach in last 5 years. You take it from Hitachi to Cosmos. I know for sure, including Bangladesh Bank or City Bank or many banks. What went wrong? It was not a technology; it was human intention, human behavior, or supervisory role. What a human was supposed to do, that was miserably failed. So what we are probably waiting for one disaster to happen. Okay, and one last point, we are still believing, and I'll quote Samir again what he said, that today, since it is a network, IMPS and UPI, no, it was the intent. It was the intent of us at the time when designed the product, that we are going to touch every Indian. If we are going to touch every Indian, then we need to take up every human being, Aam Aadmi of this country. So that intent which took us to make product like that. But when you're making your product for my customer and my bank, no, you are no more in my bank, my customer, my business, and my role. You are in the integrated world. God knows somebody is connecting you with your network, and he can bring a risk for you. So I think the most important aspect in all these things, there is psychological barrier need to be broken as early as possible to safeguard the industry.
Very well said, yeah, Bharat, very well said. And I think what Samir and you are saying is the psychological barrier needs to be broken, and ultimately maybe hoga kya ki there would be an event which would then start triggering things in the right direction. So I hope let's hope it's not that way and we do it more proactively. Arpit, I think you, given your background and what you're doing in the customer onboarding process, maybe you can throw some light. Is it really event driven? Because you've already implemented client onboarding process in quite a few banks in India and across Asia. Does it have to be event driven? I mean, can it not be done proactively? And even if, let's say, if there is intent to do it proactively, do you see that our banks are willing to go that extra mile and break that psychological barrier that Bharat pointed out to implement, AI and certain advanced machine learning models to combat financial crime?
Yeah, I think from our experience, at least, because it's about money and budgets more than anything else, right? It's not that the bank would want the best risk solution also, but it just so happens that the money is with the business.
Yeah.
So eventually, I don't think when we sell solution, any bank says that risk is not important to me. It's just that eventually, because the money is lying with the business guy, they will have the biggest say on the table. That's how it. So it's very driven from money. If you compare it between US and India, in US the financial regulator has very heavy fines if you go on anything small. So that risk of financial loss is so huge that when we work with banks in US or Europe, the person who's on risk has an equal and sometimes even more say than the business, because the money aspect is actually in favor of the risk guy. In India, that's not true. I think one of the things has been that India regulator, like you go to the last fines, the maximum fine, at least I have seen, is 5 crores. Maybe my information and memory might not be as great, but generally it's between that 1 crore to 5 crore range, right?
There's a rounding. There's a rounding of error for bank.
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean, Bharat is absolutely right. I mean, no one really cares, right? So then eventually you would end up doing what the business asks you to do. So somewhere I think if the incentives or negative incentives are equally well set, banks would be more careful. Right now they're only care about fraud, right? And fraud is once in a while event, right? It doesn't happen on a daily basis. It's not even part of audit and monitoring. It's a once in a while event. And I think that gets brushed aside, it gets forgotten. Though what we have seen is that modern companies, fintechs, which are implementing regtech solutions like Signzy, these solutions are being built on a very fundamental principle of risk. And even when we are trying to bring it to business that we want to streamline your onboarding, there is a very fundamental risk aspect that we take care about. And the way we see this progressing is that these two things to kind of become one. So for you not to differentiate between a great user experience and risk, for you to say that both have to come together in one single solution. And while I'm trying to give the best user experience, reduce the time of onboarding, I want to equally enhance my ability to do risk mitigation on that process. And that, I think, that has been one of our pitches to banks. And I think that has been also one of the reasons that a lot of people had liked when we are pitching that. And as we are seeing more, that eventually, because a lot of risk and financial crime today is the manual process, is very, very operation driven. But I think as we have matured on the front end, it is always, the trend is always from front end and then you see
Back.
to
True.
the back, right? So you will see that it's kind of in middle engine right now. A lot of teams are trying to also do operations and trying to digitize it. So we will see that once these solutions will eventually reach the reporting, will eventually reach FIU. And I think then no one will talk about these being as two different things. Everyone will say, I need a digital solution which takes care of my user experience, at the same time takes care of my risk. And these are not opposites. These are the same thing.
No, interesting. In fact, so I'm short on time, but Arpit, you made some very insightful comments in terms of how to go about implementing these kind of solutions and more importantly the adoption. So I'm just moving on to the questions. We've got 5 minutes. Arpit, the first question is for you. I don't know if you can see the chat window on your screen, but let me read it. It says that even with VCIP and other digital technologies, there is still fraud associated with digital onboarding. how can AI ML fraud technologies be used to complement VCIP kind of technologies?
Yeah, I think see, fraud is always human driven. What we do in AI is try to replicate fraud scenarios and
Yeah.
train the engine on those fraud scenarios. So how a model is trained, and I think that is typically where I think a good solution has to be matched against a bad solution, where a lot of banks I think go wrong. That it is not about how your solution looks. It is about how much data was fed and what quality and quantity of data was used to build that AI solution, right? So one face match is very different from another face match, and I've seen most banks treating it like commodity, and that is where I think a lot of them go wrong. So VCIP, yes, fraud is going to happen if you're not going to implement measures within VCIP to counter fraud. You have to build data. So we have a very large data annotation team which builds fraud scenarios and then feeds it to train the models on these frauds as well. So yes, VCIP is a good solution, but I think to counter fraud, you will have to put these fraud or anti-fraud measures within onboarding. It's not going to happen on its own.
No, that's interesting. In fact, so what you're telling me is, while implementing machine learning model, it's not just about data and technology. It is as much about domain and as much about knowing the business, the products, the customer, and the banking environment as as it is about knowing the machine learning models. And what would really work is somebody who can bring the two together. Great point, Arpit. 3 minutes left. One question, very, very interesting. It is about some statistics one can throw on number of frauds that is being reduced because of AI and ML solutions. Any idea? I mean, sorry, I don't have that statistics with me personally, but I'll try and find out and come back to the person who's raised this question. But Bharat, Samir, Arpit, any one of you can answer this question.
No, I think it's too difficult to answer this question.
Yeah,
Of course,
yeah.
bank may have, but let me put this question in different way in
Sure,
terms of
sure.
security.
Yeah.
Because a few years ago when I used to place my security budget to the board, the one question often asked, what is the ROI on security? Because security budget is something very big amount in nature. So I tend to tell that, look, till the time you have no incident, that is your ROI. You are not hacked or you are not exposed, you are not attacked. That is the ROI. Now, the moment someone enter into your system, what kind of damage he may do, nobody can predict. Nobody can predict it. So therefore, how much we can save or we have saved, that figure nobody can give you, or it is impossible. But all we can take kind of satisfaction, and it's not kind of satisfaction, but it's a reality that your customers, your 99.999% satisfaction is ensured by providing flawless and secure transaction. That's the ROI on whatever you're going to implement for AI and ML.
Perfect. No, great way to put. Samir, Arpit, any last points on these on the ROI?
So maybe
I'll
give a very simple view that I don't know about ROI this side, but because we don't want fraud, you would put customer through tons of inconvenience, right? For example, when we say that there is a cooling period, right? Cooling period has to be some with logical process, right? 48 days, 48 hours or 24 hours for cooling period. I think those who do should be shot dead, right? We are talking about on UPI, I can do transaction to any time, any person, anywhere. When I go to NEFT or IMPs, I have to go through that ridiculous structure, right? So the point is, we have to put convenience, right? Login करके पहले आपको पासवर्ड डालो, फिर कुछ और डालो, फिर OTP डालो, मम्मी का नाम, बहन का नाम, चाची का नाम. I mean, I think the point I'm saying, when AIML is not there, everything else is there. So fraud may not happen. But I mean, to be honest, salary processing in my company is a disaster. It's always when anybody new joins, it's a waste because it's delayed. Because the moment you have to add, then wait for 2-3 days and pay, right? It's a killing, right? So all I'm saying is that you may not have fraud, but you would have killed the customer anyway.
Okay, let me just. I think we're up with the time. Let me just sort of summarize the theme. And so what we're seeing, and we have discussed about this, is the convergence of different streams under financial crime compliance. umbrella. We are seeing some global banks implement a program, and they're carving a new unit. It's called financial crime compliance, under which fraud, anti-money laundering, anti-bribery, corruption, cybercrime, all of that is sort of coming in. And regulators are also sort of motivating the banks to go in this direction. So that's a key theme. Any last, sort of comment or points that you want to raise? Any one of you can sort of pitch in. Arpit, maybe we can start off with you. Why don't you start off any one comment and then we'll move?
Yeah, no, I think why this is happening to some extent is because the world is going digital and this distinction between AML and cybercrime is almost reduced, right? So most AML crime would be a cybercrime. So more and more as banking and financial is becoming digital, I think this is actually the same thing. So I think that's a right move. And I think all of us said that I think regulator looks at a very future, and this is the future, right? If you're saying 90% of my banking is going to go digital, then everything is going to be a cybercrime. So this is the right direction.
Thanks, Arpit. Samir, any last comment or recommendation for our fellow audience?
No, I think my view is that if you have data as insight, data can be from a fraud management perspective or a crime perspective. The same is for maybe cross sell, upsell, right? Same data, same framework, same insights, right? Our challenge is we are creating those silos and the vendors are selling those products to our business and they are creating the same data represented differently. I think we have to think about one way. I was talking to one guy that collection data is finally has to go into cross-sell. You have to go back to cross-sell or can also go to your underwriting engine, right? That's where it should be. The collection is nothing but underwriting, right? But we get silos and both sides don't go. So you're talking about the rewiring. I think rewiring has to be done from mind perspective. When we underwrite the customer, we don't underwrite it from a customer perspective. We underwrite for product. Just imagine we don't have the insights, right? We are still that old world guys, right? So I think kuch badalni padegi.
Good point, Samir. So Bharat, over to you for final comments
underwriting is fine, but you should not write off that customer. That's a message I pick up from Samir. But one thing is just to conclude that cybercrime will continue to happen. Fraud will continue to happen. It is impossible to prevent either of. If someone say that yes, I will, my organization will never ever have such situation of a security breach or kind of fraud, then it is the only true thing. The guy does not understand about the security, or or he's a good liar. I mean, that's the only two possibility. Otherwise, it is impossible. All we have to do that. How soon we can detect that kind of attack or fraud, and the moment you detect, how fast you can respond. AI and ML is the only breather, which will provide to the system or the organization to detect fast, response fast. I think that's what is the bottom line for the entire financial crime.
Perfect. Thank you, Bharat, for summarizing well, and thank you to all of you for taking out your precious time for this conversation. Over to you, Javashi, over to you.
Thank you, dear panelists, for such an engaging discussion. We appreciate you taking time out to join us today. We would like to thank our session partner, Refinitiv, our gold partners, Reactor, Netherlands Embassy, and Cybersprint, our bronze partner, Onfido, and knowledge partner, EY. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back in 5 minutes with our next session. Stay tuned.
Thank you. Thank you so much.